terms of the contracts that you can, that are required in the contract. So that's a free service, and we help you from soup to nuts on that. So it's definitely worth a call if you think you might be interested in looking to do some work with some level of government.
And your 6-week program is what are the requirements to get into that?
Same as it. As long as you're legal, we'll talk to you. And a lot of, like I said, because we have 2 different programs, so the one that's really for startups or those just considering business, we focus a lot of assessment on the assessment of the business idea. So we get a lot of people that really haven't even started a business. They're just going through that phase of, is this right for me?
Great.
So I'm Nate Madsen. I work at an organization called Echoing Green. It's a little bit different sort of organization from my fellow panelists. We're a nonprofit foundation, and we fund for-profit and nonprofit social enterprises through a fellowship model. So once a year, we have an application process that's a couple of different stages. We started up in December this past year and got about 3,500 applications, and then over the course of 4 or 5 months, whittled it down to about 25 people who will be fellows. And so they'll get $90,000 of investment. For nonprofits, it's a grant, and for-profits, it's a no-interest loan that is only triggered when they hit certain milestones or pretty far into their business. And in addition to the money, we do 2 years of pretty intensive capacity building consultancy services. So my job is to work with about 15 nonprofits and for-profits who are just starting up to get them thinking about their communication strategy, their fundraising strategy, making intros to potential funders or donors, working on their nuts and bolts of their back office, hiring and firing, setting them up with executive coaches, this sort of thing. So a little bit different model, and we're definitely looking for a little bit different things when we consider our applicants. We place pretty equal weight on the person who's applying and the actual project or idea itself, with a little bit of a little bit more weight on the person side, in fact, which is pretty different from traditional lenders. We have people coming to us who are really just either at the idea stage or they've just launched. And so we really believe for social entrepreneurs, at that point we're investing as much in the person themselves and their ability to execute on the idea, their resiliency, because starting up a business is never going to be easy, you're always going to run into obstacles, their leadership potential, their ability to attract resources and get other people as excited about their project and their idea as they are, as well as the more traditional business model things on the actual project side. So I think that covers what we do.
And when you say that you place a lot of emphasis on the person, like how exactly do you evaluate that? I know some of the things that you just mentioned, but do they have to write essays, come in for intensive rounds of interviews? And what are really the specific, is there measurable criteria, or is it just very subjective based on your interviews with that potential entrepreneur?
Yeah, I would say it's always relatively subjective when you're judging qualities of a person, but we do as much as we can to sort of systematize it. So the way our application works is there's an initial application in December that's pretty lengthy, and about half of the essay questions relate to the person themselves. So we're looking for people who have examples of obstacles that they've managed to overcome, and we're even looking for the ability of people to spot obstacles in advance and try and avoid them, in addition to just being able to go over the boulders to navigate around them. And then we're looking for people, with a demonstrated ability over time to attract those resources. And so that's not necessarily someone who, can get up on stage in front of 10,000 people and get everyone inspired. It might be that person, but it might just be someone who, when they tell their story in a one-on-one situation, their passion for it really shines through, and they communicate it in a way that gets you excited about it, and you want to help them. And it might not be that you want to give them money, it might be that you want to volunteer with them and give them your time, or you want to give them access to your network. So demonstrated through past projects that they've worked on. Then also, we have them all submit a 1-minute pitch video. And then there's a second round of applications with another long series of essays. And then we fly our finalists, about 50 people, out to New York for 3 days of intensive rounds of interviews with experts in the field, social entrepreneurs themselves, many of them. So it's a pretty long process, but we try to really get to know them pretty well personally, so we know who we're investing in. And we think of it as investing in career social entrepreneurs. So if someone was to get a fellowship with us, and the idea that they brought in their business was to fail, and then 2 years down the line, they were then to create something incredibly successful, we would still think of that as a win, because we're really investing in them over the course of their career, rather than just with the specific idea that they bring in. So it's a pretty non-traditional approach.
Are there other organizations out there like yours?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at different stages, there are sort of different entry points depending on where your organization is or where you are personally. But there are other organizations like Ashoka that think about entrepreneurs in a similar way that we do. Unreasonable Institute, I know their application deadline is coming up in a couple weeks here. They take a somewhat similar approach to people who are at the really early stage. Yeah, I think there's definitely a growing ecosystem of people who are looking at social entrepreneurship in that way.
If I could just add one of the things that Nate said, which really resonated with me, and I know from partnering and speaking with Erich is some part of what UCEDC does as well. Nate talked about understanding the person and knowing the person and part of their decision process. In doing microloans, a big part of what we're looking at and we're judging is the character of the individual that we're lending to. Because being a microloan lender and being an agency that's not doing bank loans, we're taking on a little bit more risk. Okay? So we want to understand that person much better, because the first time they come in may be via an application or maybe via a seminar. And the way that we do our underwriting, the best way for me to compare it is like a traffic light once we take in an application. It comes back red, yellow, green. And probably about 80% of our applications come back yellow. 10 green, 10 red. And the ones in the yellow then, it's a matter of how well do we know the business, how well do we know the individual or individuals that are putting together the business, and how foundationally set are they in their process, in their understandings, in their past track record, that this loan will be successful. So really understanding that character, when you're ever talking to somebody about a microloan, that's one of the biggest things that we're looking to base everything on. There's still a component of a credit score, but it's probably more in the 600s than the 700s that the bank wants to see. Yeah, we still love to get collateral, but maybe we'll take a second or a third position behind somebody else because we want to try to find a way not to say no. We try to figure out a way to make it happen for you. And sometimes the best way for us to do that is to really get to know you better. And in a way that we do that is by looking for some of them to then attend the 8-week training program, which we get a better chance to observe how they show up, what they do, how they participate, and it really gives us a better understanding of who we're potentially lending to.
Questions? Bruce?
Can you, particularly Mike and maybe Erich, differentiate a little bit, like maybe give some of the profile of, the type of borrower that's coming to you, either the stage, the type of business, and then anything you could speak about in terms of, a range of terms or something, just to kind of put a little meat on the bones?
Sure. So, for ourselves, our loans go no more than 5 years. Our typical loan's 3 years. And the way I want you to think about GNEC is that we are the rest area on the highway. Okay? You're going to stop, you're going to get some gas, maybe get directions, stretch your legs, get something to eat, make sure you're heading in the right direction. We want to get you back onto the highway and get you to a bank. Because a micro lender, my loans are going to be more expensive than the bank loans. So if I'm borrowing a line of credit from the bank at 5%, I'm lending at 3 to 5 points over that based on your underwriting in your deal. So your loan with me may be at 10%, where you could probably get a bank loan at 5%. So I'm taking on more risk, so it's going to be a higher interest rate. What's the other part?
I think, yeah, it's, you know,
The-
so
the
maybe an
term.
example and a profile, like who fits that?
So 3 years ago, I would have told you most of the businesses that we look at and that we do are early stage startups that are mostly service or retail. But via the economic downturn, I'm never surprised by anybody who walks through my door. We've had doctors, we've had accountants, we've had attorneys. I'm not surprised by anybody who picks up the phone or shoots an email and walks through the door, because their line of credit was stopped at a bank because they had a blip. You know, they were late on one payment, so they pulled their line, or they reduced their line, and they need $20,000 to do this next project to take them to the next opportunity, and now they can't get it where they had it before. So where before I could have probably given you a better representation of who we typically see, now I'm never surprised when it comes through the door.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of that, and the fact that we really run the gamut on who we lend to. It just really crosses every possible phase of type of business. And I will say, in our current portfolio, I think at the time when loans were made, about 40% of them were true pre-turning the key startups. So it's really, you know, talking about character-based lending, when somebody hasn't even earned $1 of revenue, that's really a leap of faith from a lender's perspective. And our average loan under our microloan program is about $17,000. We can go up as high as $50,000, but really the niche that seems to fit organizations like ours are those businesses that are just getting started and they need that little bit extra, or they're the seasonal businesses that, you know, I'm a landscaper, how do I keep paying my bills over the slower months, or things of that nature. So it's really that smaller type of loan to, like Mike's analogy of the rest stop on the highway. We're here to help guide you to that next level where you can become bankable, or you can become, attractive to more traditional areas of funding.
And just to dig deeper just for a second, in that loan program, because it sounds like you have some backing or from the SBA.
Yep.
So what is that, how does that really translate? Like if you said like only maybe 20% is the unsecured part of it. So can you just break that down, like how that works?
Yes.
What does that mean for a borrower?
Sure. You would come in, let's say you're looking for a loan of $200,000. Okay. We would lend you the money that we would have to acquire from another source, whether it's we borrow that money from, a bank under a loan to lenders program, or that's, through a foundation or something like that. But usually it's borrowed funds ourselves, and then we will turn around and we will lend that out under this SBA program at give you the $200,000. The SBA doesn't give any money. Basically, what they'll do is they'll say, okay, $200,000, I'm going to guarantee, what are my numbers here, $150,000 of that. So if the borrower walks away, they would pay us up to that, 75% of that total loan balance. Again, that's not after, it's not just, oh, well, I can't repay your loan, so you're getting paid anyway. I mean, we'll exhaust every possible arena to get that money back, but the concept of the whole SBA program, or guaranteed loan program, is to make lenders more willing to, if you're falling in that gray area, this should hopefully push you over the edge where we'll be willing to make that money.
Is it more expensive money to get that kind of, it sounds...
Yeah, I mean, typically all our loans at organizations like us are more expensive money just based on the level of risk we're taking. So it is more expensive than if you are fortunate enough to be bankable or in a traditional fund, but it's not putting it on your credit card either. It's not. We're not loan sharks.
So it's different